Hi, everyone. Good morning, or almost good afternoon. It's great to be here. I will share with you that I always have these conversations with myself. I'm more or less at the age of Guri Alfi, and I'm always asking myself, why is he having all the fun, and I'm coming here as the professor talking about theories and serious ideas. But probably that's what I am, and that's what I can do. We have an impossible mission, and that's to go through a crash course on the social psychology of social identity in 9 minutes. And that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to save you a full semester, okay? And I'm going to say the most important things in the next 9 minutes. I will say that I hope that what I'm going to say here is going to give you some framework, some prism through which you can analyze or think about different things that you're going to talk about during this day. So we all talk about identities, and I've heard the word identity here for 10 or 15 times during the speakers that came before me, but do we really know what social identity is? And when we talk about social identity, what we refer to is the part of our self, of the self, that is based on our membership or affiliation with a certain group. Now I'll say it more simply. I mean, if I'll ask you now, can you define yourself? Who you are, okay? Think about it for 10 seconds. If I'll ask you to define yourself, who are you? So research shows that 9 out of 10 of your first answers to this question would be based on your affiliation with different groups. So when I ask people, who are you? Some people would say, I'm a man, I work at Stanford, I'm a left-winger or right-winger, I'm a Jew, I'm an Israeli, I'm an American. All of these things are based on our affiliation or membership with certain groups, which means that our social identity is not just, something very fluid and vague. It's really something that defines who we are. Who are we as human beings? And it means also that our identity or our identification with specific groups determine the way we think, the way we analyze or appraise certain situations. It determines our goals, it determines our values, and it can be changed very easily when certain aspects of our identities are primed. Let me give you an example. If I'm going to say right now that I'm going to start a political conversation, right now, immediately some parts of you will be relying on their leftist, rightist, Republican, Democratic identities. Everything you're going to say or think about is going to go through this lens. But if I'll say that we're going to run a gender-based conversation, suddenly the split would be very different. But I think that the more interesting question that we should ask ourselves is, why does it happen? Why our social identities are so important for us? And in the early 70s, two social psychologists, Jewish social psychologists, Tashfel and Turner, introduced probably the most important theory in the history of social psychologists. And the theory is what's called social identity theory. And they said many things, but one very, very important thing that they said is that people belong to groups because these groups help them, to survive, to feel part of something. There are different reasons to be part of a group. But they asked, why is it so important for people that the group would be such a central part of their identity? And their answer was very interesting, but also very challenging to us today, and I'll try to explain. What they said is that people want social groups to be an important part of their identities because they help them to feel good about themselves. Because when I identify with a certain group, and I perceive that group to be moral, to be competent, to be all the good things I can say about different groups, it means something about me, right? If I see myself as part of a great community, and this community is part of who I am, then it means that I'm a great person, okay? If I served in the Israeli army, okay? And this is part of my identity. And I see the Israeli army as the most moral army in the world, like many Israelis do, then it means that I'm a very, very moral person. So my connection to the group, my identification with the group, it serves a purpose. The group is functional. It serves an important psychological purpose for me. And now there's a challenge. A challenge that I really want you all to think about during your discussions today and maybe even after today. What happens in these very challenging cases in which my group is no longer a source of pride or does no longer serve the purpose that my group is supposed to serve for me in specific situations? Now, it doesn't have to be in general, but it can be also in terms of specific actions. Zach mentioned before, the Israeli election and the fact that at least some Israelis, some Jews in the US express concern about these situations, but I can think about other situations as well. What happens to our connection, to our identification to the group, when suddenly the group doesn't serve the purpose of helping me to feel so good about myself? And I want to ask each and every one of you to think about a situation in which you've experienced that challenge, in which a group that was a very important part of who you are created this challenge for you. And I want to offer, or based on research that's done in social psychology, I want to offer that there are 3 ways to cope with this very, very challenging situation. And it's based on work of an NYU professor called Eric Knowles, who said that people who face this challenge can be split into 3 groups. And if you want to remember the term, so he called it the 3D. Not 3 dimension, 3 Ds, 3 options to cope with this situation in which your group, your identification group, causes some challenges for your positive self-identity. So one option that many people use is to deny. Deny or defend. Deny or defend is basically saying, I see my group, I can see that it has done some immoral things, wrongdoings, things that for me are very problematic to identify with, and I tell myself, it didn't happen. It didn't happen, or there was a very, very good reason for them to do that, and I support them no matter what they'll do in any situation. And many, many people use this denial or defending mechanism. To be honest, that's the easiest one. It's the easiest one because if I can fully justify the problematic actions of my group, then I don't have a challenge anymore, and it's very easy. So that's the first D. The second D, Eric Knowles calls the distancing. Distancing is a mechanism in which we simply distance ourselves from that very specific identity. So if one aspect of my identity connecting to a certain university, a certain country, a certain religious belief, whatever, cause challenge to me, some people, what they'll do is simply distance themselves from this specific identity. I will never say, I don't know, that I'm not an Israeli anymore, or I'm not Jewish anymore, but I can say that being an Israeli is plays a much lower role in the way I deal with my life, and it's not a very central aspect of my identity. So we had denial, we have distancing, and the third option is what we call dismantle. Dismantle is the option, and it's the less common one, and it should be said, but I will also say that it's the most recommended one, although it's probably the most difficult one. The dismantle option is to say, this part of my identity is so important for me that even though I face these very, very serious challenges, I choose to fight. And I choose to try and address these challenges, and I choose to try and change what I perceive as either immoral or problematic behavior of my group, because I really want this aspect of my identity to remain very central to me and to other people in my environment, to my kids, to my friends, to everyone around me. So we have denial, we have distancing, and we have dismantling. The first one is the most popular one. The second one might be the most problematic one when it comes to the issues that we're going to discuss during these days. And the third one, although it's the most challenging one, it's also the most recommended. And for me, I can say in my work, in our organization, in other places, one of the most important challenges is to move people between these options and to make or encourage more and more people to try and fight in order for them to be proud of their important aspects of their identities. And I want to encourage you to do the same and think about it when during the discussions today. Thank you very much.